A few days ago, a friend of mine sent me some information about using LYE as a deworming treatment for livestock. Now, I have a lot of experience with LYE in other applications like soap making, as a drain cleaner, of course, but also in some culinary applications. So naturally, I was curious and I just dove into this topic, and I'm excited to share that with you guys today. Before we dive all the way into this, I want to give a quick shout out to Rachel Hester at Whoopsie Daisy Farm, who sent all of this information my way. Sage and Stone Homestead, who has done some really incredible reaction content to this topic already. And the original video who has sparked this interesting conversation online, Poopa's Farm. I'm going to link all of their accounts and information in this video's description. So if you want to continue to dive down this rabbit hole, go check out their content after you've finished this video. The original video kind of kickstarting this conversation online is from Poopa's Farm. He's a sweet farmer just sharing his personal and family experience using this method with their livestock. They use it on their poultry, their hogs, cattle, sheep, goats, the whole shebang. And he says that they have been using this method for generations. He insists that they have had amazing fecal test results and that he has many friends and family who also use this method with phenomenal results. He also talks about how they used to use wood ash, hardwood ash, in times where they maybe didn't have access to lye, which, as somebody who does a lot of nixtamalizing and soap making, checked out, because you can use hardwood ash to nixtamalize corn to make masa for tortillas and things, and you can also use it in soap making. It is an extremely alkaline, caustic substance. So we'll get into more of that in a second. But this has so far all been checking out to me and very interesting. What exactly is LYE? You can often pick it up something like this at your local hardware store. It's typically marketed as a drain cleaner, but it's made of sodium hydroxide if you get pure LYE, and it can be used for a lot of things. Like I mentioned, it can be used in soap making, and it can also be used in certain dilutions for making foods. German pretzels are famously dipped in a 3 to 4% LYE solution before they're baked to give them that really characteristic dark brown crust. So I know that in certain dilutions, this is absolutely safe for culinary uses. What are the current main options for deworming? There are, of course, the pharmaceutical, you get from the vet or you get from the feed store options. These are things like ivermectin. And while they are typically pretty effective, they are not always. And this is where we're seeing a lot of parasite resistance coming into play. Then there are herbal options, which I think are fantastic, but also have kind of a mixed reputation. Some people really love them, some people don't think they're very effective, and there's also a really broad spectrum of quality and ingredients used, so it's not always the most reliable, and it's often a really expensive option. Then kind of if you're into fringe alternative natural things, Joel Salatin in his book Salad Bar Beef really promotes using a detergent, an eco detergent called Shakely's Basic H, and using that in livestock watering troughs for a few days every month. And I think that this is a really similar approach to this. That cleaning substance that he is suggesting using has sodium hydroxide as an ingredient. But here's the thing, I don't know exactly what dilution and percentage that is, and I don't know exactly how those other ingredients necessarily come into play. But a lot of people have used this approach and have glowing recommendations for it. So I do think that that is an interesting thing to put side by side, since it does have a shared ingredient. So while the pharmaceutical and herbal dewormers are going to be really targeting parasites and killing them off, the Shakely's Basic H, I think, is going to be similar to the LYE solution in as it's more of a terrain theory approach. It's messing with the pH balance, which if you are into alkaline diets at all, you probably are already starting to think, oh yeah, this seems reasonable. If you're not, another rabbit hole for you to dive down. Parasites really function best at a lower pH, and our modern diets are typically a lot more acidic. So when you can raise the pH, it creates a place where they don't really want to live, they don't thrive, and so naturally they die off. And I think that's where this kind of comes into play and would be similar to Shakely's. Is this safe? I'd like to take just a second and do a vinegar comparison, maybe just to help open your mind a little bit. Lye is scary. It's marketed as a drain cleaner. We all know it's super caustic, really bad owies, right? But what about vinegar? Vinegar is commonly sold at a 5% dilution for household use. You use it in salad dressings, you rinse your hair, clean your countertops, whatever. It's a very benign, not very harmful product, right? But if you get agricultural grade vinegar that is like 30, 40% acidic, very dangerous, very caustic, will absolutely harm you. In the same vein, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we have lye. It's a highly alkaline substance that absolutely can be dangerous at higher concentrations. It will hurt you. At 3 to 4%, it's used for dipping traditional German pretzels. And when we're talking about livestock feed, we're diluting it even further. We're going like 1 or less % dilution. And in that Poopah's Farm video, he sticks his hand in that bucket and mixes it with his bare hand. I wouldn't probably use my bare hand in it still, just in case, until I have it mixed all the way really thoroughly, but still. Now, another really alkaline solution that I have used a ton in a culinary application is calcium hydroxide. Not exactly the same as sodium hydroxide, but a similar highly alkaline solution that is used to nixtamalize corn, and it helps bring out the vitamins, especially B vitamins, and makes it much more digestible and bioavailable. So speaking of wood ash, this really stuck out in my mind because prior to pickling lime being really commercially available, a lot of traditional people would nixtamalize their corn with wood ash, just like Poopah was talking about using wood ash in place of lye. And if you're a soap maker, you know that the precursor to our modern lye in soap making was often hardwood ash as well. So this is all tying together beautifully in my mind. There are also a lot of research papers and studies on treating animal feed with these alkaline substances to make them more bioavailable and to increase feed efficiency. So as far as safe goes, yes, it's probably absolutely safe in the right dilutions. So is this actually effective? This is where we have a little bit less concrete answers. So if you are into the idea of terrain theory, the alkaline diet, then you're probably a little bit more open to, yeah, this would probably work, but there's not really a lot of super conclusive evidence that it does. There was a study like in the 20s that tried to show that sodium hydroxide could work to kill parasites. It was not the most technical and laboratory study. But then in 2022 in Ukraine, there was another study on this, and they actually used test tubes, and it was very sciencey and above board. But here's the thing. They were studying parasites collected from goat feces, not actually studying it in live animals. So they had really great results. With a 1% solution, they had a 100% death rate of parasites. But that catch is that it was not in live animals. They were taking the parasites out of the feces and studying that separately from the live animal. We don't have in animal studies showing that it is safe and effective. And I personally don't think that we will get those because there's not money to be made here. So it's just like herbal remedies, things like that. They don't get the funding because there's no money to be made. So some pros and cons. Why would you choose to do this? Why might you think this is a bad idea? Well, one, ease of use. A lot of folks who are maybe getting up in years, maybe you're pregnant, you have little ones in tow, maybe you're just a little bit physically not as up to snuff as you used to be, and catching a bunch of livestock to do an oral drench or give them a shot in the booty, that might be really, really difficult for you, especially if you don't have help and infrastructure. With this lye method mixed in with the feed, it's incredibly easy to distribute to your herd or your flock. All you do is put it in the feed and lay it out, and they gobble it up. You don't have to catch anybody and fight with anybody and put yourself physically at risk or in immense strain. So that's a huge pro for somebody who is a little bit more physically limited. Another thing to consider is cost. With the cost of everything in life rising, this is an extremely economical option. I think locally a jug of ivermectin is like $80, $90 right now. A little jar like I showed you of my lye is $9 at my local hardware store, and I can get it cheaper online, of course. And then the herbal dewormer that I've been using, it's $35 plus shipping. It ends up being nearly $50 by the time I get a package shipped to me. And that adds up really quickly. Another huge perk if you are doing dairy animals especially is the withdrawal period. As far as we know, with live feed like this, there is no withdrawal period. Pupa says he feeds this to baby animals, to pregnant animals, nursing, lactating, milking, whatever. No withdrawal period at all on eggs or anything. With so many seeming pros, what are the cons? Well, mostly the unknown. Like I mentioned before, there just aren't any really reputable live animal studies that show that this is effective on parasites. Based on the research that is out there on alkaline treated feed in general, I feel like this is pretty safe option. The question is really about whether it's effective as parasite control. And that we have a little bit of doubt on. Could it be? Yes. Have I done the time to get all the fecals done and really study this long term in my herd? No, I have not. If somebody else has, I would love to hear those results. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up a gallon batch of this treated feed. And I've got a little 2-gallon bucket here. I'm gonna put about a quart of water in the bottom here. There. Now, this was the only part I disagreed with Pupa's method on, is he put the lye in the bucket first and then put the water on top. And as somebody who uses lye in a lot of other applications, I was always taught that the snow falls on the lake never falls on the snow. You always put your lye in on top of the water because it helps to avoid like splashback and undesirable consequences like that. Every gallon of feed that you're treating uses about a half a teaspoon of lye. You just want to make sure all of the lye is dissolved. We're going to add in the feed. So you can use this with, I've got like a whole barley mix right here, but you could also do this with a ground feed or a mash. According to Pupa, this is super duper flexible. This is just what I usually feed and what I'm using. There you go, breakfast. Now, Pupa says to feed about a pint per small ruminant, which these guys definitely are small, they're Finns, and about a quart for like cattle, swine, bigger animals, and then also to poultry, just willy-nilly. So that's what we're gonna do. When you're working with lye, remember to use a plastic pail. You could also use glass, but aluminum buckets and galvanized buckets are pretty dangerous when you're working with lye because the lye can leach some of those icky chemicals out of those metals, and that is in fact toxic to your livestock. So plastic pail. I'm feeding this once a month with the full moon, which is when parasites are typically most active, but Pupa says you can feed this up to every other week if desired. Whenever you're doing something like this, make sure your animals have plenty of fresh water available to them, as well as their regular vitamins and minerals. And another thing that Pupa mentioned that I have been practicing is he says that they need a little bit of extra iron. So to accommodate that, I haven't been doing iron supplements, but I have been putting out a little bucket of molasses water. So this is something that I am planning to try out long-term with my flock, and I'll keep you guys updated on that as this journey goes along. But so far, everybody is doing really well. This is the second dose that I have given them. They do seem to have already put on a little bit of weight, and they're looking great. I would love to hear from you guys. If you have any personal experience with this method, if you have questions, comments, concerns, I think this is really a conversation worth having, especially with the rise of parasite resistance in our herds. So keep it respectful, but let's talk about this more in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you found value in today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and of course, leave a comment because I really do want to hear what you have to say on this subject. All right, I'll see you guys next time.